today, goodbye. The sweetness and the sorrow. Wish me luck the same to you. But I can't regret what I did for love, what I did for love. Look, my eyes are dry. The gift was ours to borrow. It's as if we always knew. And I won't forget what I did for love, what I did for love. Gone, love is never gone. As we travel on, love's what we'll remember. Kiss today goodbye, and point me towards tomorrow. We did what we had to do. Won't forget, can't regret what I did for love, what I did for love, what I did for love. Love is never gone. As we travel on, love's what we'll remember. Kiss today goodbye, and point me toward tomorrow. We did what we had to do. Won't forget, can't regret what I did for love. Won't forget, can't regret what I did for love.
Thank you very much, Heather and Eileen. That was beautiful. Welcome, everyone, to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Whidbey Island. We are happy to see you this morning on this beautiful August day, and welcome to those who are joining us on Zoom. And welcome to what is called the dog days of summer. You know, as a child, I wasn't really sure what that phrase meant. I conjured up images of dogs laying on the brown grass, panting on hot summer days. And what I learned later in life, actually when I was on the East Coast many years later, and which I recently confirmed through the Wikipedia, which is the source of all knowledge, is that the phrase Dog Days of Summer is a reference to Sirius, the dog star, which is part of the constellation Canis Major, the greater dog. So Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky and means scorching. So when the ancient civilizations noticed it began to rise with the sun after the summer solstice, they thought that those sweltering days were caused by Earth's proximity to the star. And the ancient Greeks and Romans then began to refer to the summer period between July 3rd and August 11th as dog star days. So that's your astrology and mythology lesson for today. And if you want more Greek mythology, I recommend that you go see the Odyssey, which is still playing at the Clyde. My name is Janet Garrow, and it's my true privilege today to serve as lay worship leader for this service, which is titled A Summation. And like so many smaller congregations, both UU and otherwise, I've come to learn, we do not currently have a regular minister, but our board continues to work on that process. And as we know, it's particularly difficult because we seek a part-time minister, we live on an island, and there are simply fewer candidates who are going into pastoral ministry these days. So despite that, we've been fortunate to have many excellent speakers and retired UU ministers, and one of those is with us today. And we're very pleased to welcome back to our pulpit Reverend Bill Graves. And I was fortunate to get Bill to provide me with a brief biographical sketch, not biological, of his career. Well, I did get that part too, but I'm not going to share it with you. Bill spent 34 years as a practicing attorney, and highlights of that career include representing the United States Department of Justice in judicial proceedings mandating desegregation of public schools in Alabama, and appearances before the U.S. Supreme Court and the Circuit Courts of Appeals in several landmark civil rights cases. Very impressive resume. I wish there were more attorneys like Bill still working at the Department of Justice today. And like so many of us, I'm sure it pains him and me to see how the DOJ has become so politicized and its reputation quite tarnished. But upon returning to the Pacific Northwest, Bill worked as an attorney for the city of Bellevue, which I was surprised to learn when I first moved here 7 years ago, because I had also followed him as an attorney in that office. Then he subsequently pursued private practice, and then he also was pursuing his passion for Unitarian Universalist congregation leadership, serving among other roles as president of East Shore Unitarian in Bellevue, my previous parish, Woodinville UU Church, and our own UUCWI. He attended seminary at Seattle University, and in 2010 was ordained as a UU minister in a ceremony held in this very building, which I think is such a cool thing to know about Bill. Some of you may have even attended that ceremony. So in his second chosen career, Bill served as a minister in several UU congregations, Skagit UU in Mount Vernon, Tahoma UU in Tacoma, and Kittitas UU in Ellensburg. So I'm sure he has substantial knowledge and experience of what it means to serve a small congregation like ours. Over the years, Bill has delivered approximately 20 sermons from this pulpit. And so we welcome Reverend Graves warmly back today to this pulpit and are very pleased and thankful that you have agreed to speak with us today. I want to also extend our sincere appreciation to all the dedicated folks who week after week, month after month, work behind the scenes to prepare this service. Our two musicians today, soloists Heather Good McCoy and pianist Eileen Soskin, our incredible technical support crew, Sandy Welsh and April White, our ushers, John and Joanna, membership committee members, Jean and Dallas, and those who are preparing our refreshments. Thank you, Deb. Why do we mention these people during our announcements? Well, first of all, it's to acknowledge and thank them for their contributions. And we want to remind you that it takes all kinds of volunteers in different capacities to bring these services to us each week. I recently read a UU publication that some congregations take the summer off, and I thought, mostly I think on the East Coast, but I thought, well, that's kind of nice, but it's nice to be able to see people over the course of the summer and to have visitors who come to our congregation. So announcements. All right, I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon. Next Sunday, there will be a dedicated offering for the victims of the recent fires in Spokane, Washington. I'm sure we have all read and watched the news in horror about what has happened in Spokane. Over 800 buildings have burned. It's such a local tragedy. It really brings the impact of wildfires home. And next Sunday will be our opportunity to do our part to assist. Our in-gathering and water communion service will be coming up on September 13th, so I want you to be aware of that. Joseph Bednarek will be our guest speaker, and if you're not familiar with water communion, it's an interesting ritual that I think is meaningful for all of us. And we, of course, ask you to stay and participate in the annual in-gathering potluck, which is, food is always an important ritual of this congregation. There will be more about that in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. Jean has asked me to tell you that following service today, there will be a welcome circle in one of the classrooms. Visitors, a few old-timers and new-timers are invited to a short meeting to help to get to know each other better and to welcome all into this community. So after the service, grab your coffee, a cookie, and look for the sign. Gene will be here, and he'll lead you down the hallway. I've also been asked to announce that there is a drum circle after today's service. So you may have seen some people walking in with drums, and they're going to be meeting outside on the deck. So please join them. Welcome to those who are joining us for the first time or those who haven't been here for a while. And I encourage all of you to stay after the service for some light refreshments and congregation. And as always, you can read more about our congregation and its principles and what's happening in our order of service and in our weekly e-news. And if you need to find out how to get on that distribution list, please let us know. So now, if you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phones and other devices as we formally begin our service with the chalice lighting, followed by the affirmation, and thereafter by the call to worship. So the words for our chalice lighting are by Maureen Killoran. Love can transform the world. Love is the aspiration, the spirit that moves and inspires this faith that we share. Rightly understood, love can nurture our spirits and transform the world. May the flame of this chalice honor and embody the power and the blessing of the love we need, the love we give, the love we are challenged always to remember and share. So please stand, if you will, for our affirmation and followed by our opening hymn. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its practice. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. I'll do it after.
Good morning. So here I am, emerging from deep, deep retirement. Some of you may wonder, why would he do that? Well, I'm happy to answer the question. Maybe it has something to do with I wanted to show this stole one more time. Check it out. This was made, handicraft by our own Mavis Kaufman for my ordination here in 2010. So Mavis, if you're here with us on Zoom, take a bow, a virtual bow. But actually, it has more to do with why I'm here. It has more to do with, it's kind of always festered in my craw a little bit. The last time I did a sermon here was during COVID, early COVID, and it was on Zoom, and it wasn't very well attended, and there were technical problems, and I just didn't feel right somehow preaching to my laptop. So I kind of want to have another crack at it, but what I'm bringing you, going to try to bring to you is not a repetition of that sermon, but it is, I confess, derivative of that sermon. But on the, it's also true that I think that all sermons, or most all sermons, are derivative. One of prior sermons, one longtime UU minister said, well, how you make it through this job is you repeat your sermons every 3 years, and they'll never remember. But it's not a repetition, it's derivative. The title is a summation. And we just did a summation, I think. We just did the summation. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its practice. Within those words, those succinct words, are everything I think we stand for and we believe that makes us who we are. So I'm going to do a little historical romp on those, to give context to those words, that affirmation that we do every Sunday. And I'm going to get a little theological reflection on those words, and then maybe a little invitation as to how you might incorporate those words into your lives, or as an individual and as a community. So that's basically the sermon. But before we plow into that sermon, I really love to tell a backstory on the song we just sung, Let It Be a Dance. The song is composed by Rick Maston, who actually was kind of a UU troubadour in the mid-20th century. He lived in San Francisco, came out of the Bay Area. He was ordained a UU minister without going to theological school or doing any of those hoops, just because of the message that he brought through his music itinerary to many, many UU churches around the country. So I got the story that I'm going to give you about the song, the backstory about Let It Be a Dance, directly from Rick. The story goes like this, that he had a close friend in San Francisco who was a professional dancer, a woman was a professional dancer, and on the night before she was to go in for quadruple bypass surgery, she had a party, and Rick attended, and she said, here's what I want us to get together for another party a year from now, and I'm going to dance at that party, and I want Rick Maston to compose a song for that party. And the party occurred, and Let It Be a Dance was the song that was composed. So, the reading.
So Bill asked me to do a reading, which you'll hear more about during his sermon. So the reading is entitled, Love is the Doctrine of this Church. And I know that now we typically say love is the spirit of this church. But the reading is from a sermon delivered by Reverend Alice Blair Wellesley on November 12th of 2000 at First Unitarian Church and Parish in Dedham, Massachusetts. Reverend Blair was a UU parish minister from 1978 until 1995 at several congregations throughout the United States. And at the 2009 UUA General Assembly, she received an award for distinguished service to the cause of Unitarian Universalism. She has written and spoken extensively on how covenantal theology remains at the heart of Unitarian Universalism. These are her words. For any who might suppose that our 17th century Free Church ancestors talk mostly about original sin, predestination, and hellfire, I am glad to be able to tell you not one of those topics is even mentioned in the record of the founding of Dedham Church. The document describes the discussions of 1637 through 38 and the talk at each step of the way to the founding and on to their first reception of new members after the founding, and on to their first election of officers, after which they ordained 2 of their own as pastor and elder. By far, the most commonly used words in this written history are affection, affections, affectionately, embrace and love, loving and lovingly. In the first 24 pages, I counted 32 uses of the words affection and love. Why? Because then and now, and for as long as human history lasts, when all is said and done, and some more, the integrity of the Free Church comes down to our loyalty to the spirit of love at work in the hearts and minds of local members. The lay people who founded First Church Dedham knew so and clearly said so, and that is why we still say together so often in our churches now, love is the doctrine of this church. May we long continue to say so and understand deeply what we are saying in the liberal free churches these lay people founded.
So the reading you just heard, I used with permission of Reverend Alice, who, she's a retired UU minister, as was just told, and she's a current member of East Shore Unitarian Church in Bellevue, where I began my own UU journey about 1978. I'm using the reading to initiate a little historical romp back in time to that 1637, imagine that, our faith's roots. 30 families recently arrived from different parts of England, started meeting in Dedham, Massachusetts, with the intent of creating a new community. They shared a common distaste of the religion they immigrated from, which was a monarchical form in which belief and worship and organization was all dictated by a pope or an archbishop and or a king. And so they were experimenting with a very radical idea, namely, that any group of persons could join together as a church or congregation without outside authority. All you needed was a covenant with each other, a covenant from the heart. And as Alice tells us, our ancestors, in forming that covenant of the heart, talked little or at all about theological dogmas. Rather, the commonly used words at this formative time were affection, affections, affectionately, embrace and love, loving and lovingly. A revolutionary institution was thus grounded and centered in a radical concept. And ever since, there has been a thread. The integrity of the institution, the Free Church, has always depended on the dedication to the spirit of love, radical love, in the hearts and minds of the local members. I'm going to take a drink of water here. To be sure, First Church, let's get that out. First Church and Parish Dedham didn't include the word Unitarian in 1637. That didn't occur until 181 years later, when in 1818, the Dedham congregation voted to call as their minister a graduate of Harvard College, which at that time was a liberal version of Christianity, a liberal version of Christianity, which was referred to as Unitarianism, was dominant at Harvard University. A year later, in 1819, a leader of that movement named William Ellery Channing laid out a manifesto he called Unitarian Christianity. And in that sermon, often referred to as the Baltimore Sermon, Channing reaffirmed, of all human virtues, we give first place to love. Of all human virtues, we give first place to love. Now, a couple more caveats here. First, guess what? Guess what? Radical love at the Dedham Church or at Channing's church was hardly immaculate. It was embedded in a culture of white male supremacy and the doctrine of discovery, for sure. And secondly, the love they were talking about usually had a God dimension linked to it. God essentially was love to them, and perhaps a little bit more. So now let's leap forward several more generations, and we find our turn-of-the-century UU ancestors beginning to experiment whether they could extract God, that divine intermediary, from our faith and have anything viable left. I think the verdict for many of us has been that we can do okay with that old guy, without that old guy God. But we can't. We can't if love also is decentered. One of my favorite personalities, James Luther Adams, often referred to as JLA, took up this topic in the mid-20th century. Adams was a legendary professor at Harvard Divinity School and probably the preeminent UU theologian of the 20th century. He grew up, by the way, on a farm near Ritzville, Washington, about as far away from Harvard as you can get. Adams County, Washington, was named after his family. You'll pass through Ritzville and Adams County if you drive I-90 to Spokane, just east of Moses Lake. And I find that interesting because I also grew up on a farming community in eastern Washington. It's, yes, sir, me and JLA. In his keynote lecture before the Unitarian General Assembly in 1941, Adams was critical of liberal religion of his day because he felt it had been stripped down to offer salvation through glorification of reason. It was missing something from the heart, he thought. And I hope you can guess what that might have been. Adams continued, "It is not reason alone, but reason inspired by raised affections that is necessary. Many who know how to reason," he said, "fail to examine the pre-established premises from which they reason, premises that turn out on examination to be antisocial, productive camouflages of power." Does that resonate with anyone? Further, Adams continued that we liberals are largely an uncommitted and therefore a self-frustrated people. What we need is conversion within ourselves. And here he talked of love, which he described as, I quote, "the creative power from which issue all forms and all true vitality." I repeat, the creative power from which issue all forms and all true vitality. Mark those words. Love and creative power are synonymous. Adams continued, Only by such conversion can we be possessed by a love that will not let us go. I love those words, a love that will not let us go. Only through such raised affections can we achieve a new form of justice that can break through old forms of behavior and create new patterns of community. End quote. There's a backstory to Adams' 1941 lecture, which I find fascinating. He had studied in Germany during the Nazi rise to power in the 1930s, and Adams recalled, I was watching a Sunday parade on the occasion of the annual mass rally of the Nazis. As I watched the parade, I asked some people on the sidelines to explain to me the meaning of the swastika, which decorated many of the banners. Before long, I found myself engaged in a heated argument. Suddenly, someone seized me from behind and pulled me by the elbows out of the group. At the end of the alley, an uninvited host swung me around quickly and he shouted, "You fool, you fool. Don't you know in Germany today when you are watching a parade, you either keep your mouth shut or you'll get your head bashed in." A few years later, he found himself briefing a group of U.S. Army officers on the subject of Nazi ideology. He wrote, I asked those white officers if there were any essential differences in their attitudes towards other races and the Nazi attitudes. Did they think others were inferior? After each racist response to my questions, I simply repeated my question again and again. How do you distinguish yourself and Nazis? This shock of recognition, as he called it, led him to a long advocacy that white Americans genuinely confront and acknowledge our history of racism, and for our reclaiming a reason inspired by raised affections, by radical love, as necessary for salvation and overcoming that racism. My sermon this morning is in two parts, and we will pause now for a musical interlude, which I am so eagerly anticipating. Heather will bring to you a wonderful song about love, The Rose.
Some say love, it is a river that drowns the tender reed. Some say love, it is a razor that leaves your soul to bleed. Some say love, it is a hunger, an endless aching need. I say love, it is a flower, and you, its only seed. It's the heart afraid of breaking that never learns to dance. It's the dream afraid of waking that never takes the chance. won't be taken, who cannot seem to give, and the soul afraid of dying that never learns to live. When the night has been too lonely and the road has been too long, and you think that love is only for the lucky and the strong, just remember in the winter, far beneath the bitter snows, lies the seed that with the sun's love in the spring becomes the rose.
Oh, wow. How could you not have tears come to your eyes? So welcome back to part two. Here's a summation of what I've come to believe is a UU. I draw upon JLA's simple declaration: love is the creative power from which issue all forms and all true vitality. And to expand a bit, my ultimate faith and trust is in what I will call a creative process, a creative energy in the universe. Repeat, a creative energy or process in the universe. Those who trust in a creative process and align themselves with it are the people who change the course of history for the common good. They bring light and joy into the world. How do those people do that? They change their worlds by practicing radical creative love. Several weeks ago, our guest speaker, Michael Lerner, said something that sounds similar to me. He said, I quote, "The cosmos is perfectly designed to support life." And he called that cosmic love and the divine force inside each of us. And as you may remember, he challenged us to repeatedly ask ourselves the question, and I quote, "What matters now for our lives? What matters most for love? What matters most for love?" Love is creative energy that is dynamic, never static or indifferent or destructive. It is the seed that with the sun's love in the spring becomes the rose. I might add a corollary, which is that we reject fundamentalism because it tends to posit a static world where ideas are cast in stone rather than a dynamic world of creative energy. Ever since James Luther Adams' call to reconversion to a faith, to a new form of justice grounded on raised affections or radical love, we UUs have been struggling and stumbling along and failing and trying again. Notably in 1997, the UUA intentionally embarked upon a commitment to become what was termed, I quote, an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, multiculturally competent faith community. And there has been pain and strong differences of opinion about what those wordy commitments meant. It has been a ragged process at times, and I have surely felt some of the anguish. But the bottom line is we are finally naming and working to dismantle our racially based systems, and that is practicing radical love. And that is what it means to be, if that is what it means to be woke, then we should perhaps take that as a compliment. The current efforts to eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion are emphatically not what our religion is about. We need to be reminded that with this overarching commitment, we are not simply a club of social justice or anti-racism. We celebrate something transcendent beyond our practice that sustains us and guides us, or should. It is the same thing that centered the founders of the Dedham congregation 4 centuries ago. And James Luther Adams 80 years ago. It is radical love. What if, my friends, what if we adopted a spiritual practice of asking ourselves, what does love require of me today? Or the communal question, what does love require of us? Or the question suggested by Michael Lerner, what matters now most for love? Then I sense we would be aligning ourselves with what JLA called, again, the creative power from which issue all forms and all true vitality. In fact, we would be embracing a new bottom line where every political, economic, and cultural institution is considered not according to the old bottom line having to do with maximizing power, money, ego, but rather, how much does it maximize a radical love that is the prerequisite to social justice and environmental sustainability? So, my friends, I hope you will come away from this sermon remembering that we are not just mouthing empty slogans when we say every week, love is the spirit of this congregation and service is its practice. Amen. May blessed be and may it ever be so.
Thank you, Reverend Gray, for those inspiring words. And I'm happy to be able to receive them in person instead of over the computer. As I mentioned earlier, our congregation doesn't run on its own. It needs a lot of help. It's entirely self-governed by a democratic process and lots of volunteer hours. And one of the privileges of our free church tradition is the ability to provide all the financial support for our many ministries. Generosity is the true expression of love and one of our spiritual values, and we recognize this as central to our personal and community's well-being. So you're invited to participate in the blessing of generosity as the ushers now come forward with the baskets to accept your gifts. If you're just visiting today, please feel free to let the basket pass and know that your presence today is a gift to us in itself. And if you wish to take one of the paper leaves from the basket and write a note of gratitude and later pin it on the gratitude tree, please feel free to do so. Thank you all very much for your generosity. So our closing hymn today is one that I think you're all familiar with, and it is number, let me find it here, number 1053, which is in the Teal hymnal, How Could Anyone? And we're going to sing this one twice.
These are the benediction, or closing words I use most Sundays in the congregations I served. May the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us now and forever.
Now we're going to extinguish the chalice, and Bill. You know, he's a little out of practice, but he's good. We extinguish this flame to remind us love is the center. As we explore and rest, engage and heal, love is our center. When only ashes remain, love endures.
I believe for every drop of rain that falls, a flower grows. I believe that somewhere in the darkest night, a candle glows.